Take a look at this. Cagliostro is a simple story, but what happens if you see it from Clarissa's point of view? First, she leaves the convent, and she's forced to marry a dirty man, so she runs away in a car. She causes a car accident and is locked into a tower. A thief tries to rescue her, but he's caught in a trap. As she cries, her home teacher Fujiko breaks a window. The thief comes and rescues her again, but he is threatened with death, so she decides to surrender and marry the dirty old fellow. She's forced to take a pill and loses consciousness. When she wakes up, she's wearing a wedding dress and the thief gets killed right in front of her. She screams, but he is actually alive. She runs away with the thief, but gets caught again. The thief is threatened with death again, so she dives into the lake to save him. At dawn, Interpol comes. The thief is horrified and runs away. She begs him to take her with him, but the answer is no. She realizes that she is in love. So when you look at it from Clarissa's point of view, it's all very messy. This is Clarissa's point of view, but you can see how difficult it is to see a film from a certain perspective. You can't narrow it down to a single perspective. It's hard to understand. So, Howl's Moving Castle is told from Sophie's point of view. So you've got to pick up all the information that is coming at you. For example, this is a bad example. Well, maybe it's not fair to say that, but you know the latest Evangelion 3.0 you cannot redo? The reason why it seems so complex is because it's depicted solely from Shinji Ikari's point of view. If they had written the story from several perspectives, the story would have been a lot easier to understand. When you narrow it down to a single perspective, it becomes extremely subjective and deep, like some kind of literature. But in a case like this where you have only one narrator, once you stumble at any point, you're doomed. On top of this complexity, they hired the idol Takuya Kimura to voice act, which created more controversy. Like I said, Howl's Moving Castle is like the mop-up picture, but it was the second biggest hit in Ghibli history. Spirited Away is the first by a huge distance, but Howl comes in second. Suzuki would probably be furious at the term a mop-up picture, but Ghibli was having great success with The Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away, and was doing very well, setting new records one after another. But for the first time, they stumbled, and this is a failure Suzuki doesn't want to admit. When Miyazaki announced his retirement, he was asked, "What is your favorite work?" And he immediately answered, "I wouldn't say that it's my favorite, but Howl's Moving Castle is like a thorn that has stuck in me for years." So he's constantly bothered by this film. Many people misunderstand, but Miyazaki tends to fight back when he's told that his story is a cliché or illogical. He says, "Some people say that my work is illogical or cliched, but all films are cliched and films needn't be logical." Well, this is more like the nonsense of a stubborn old man. Because Howl's Moving Castle is logical to the extreme. It blew me away when I did the analysis myself. It is logical inside and out. So he meant to say, those of you who can't even see the logical side of it and complain that it's a complete failure have no right to see any films. He's like a sulky kid, so you shouldn't take his words too seriously. I wanted to talk about this film because it's actually a boys' film. Or you could say it's a film for middle-aged men, and many people don't get that. I liken this to the last scene of the Castle of Cagliostro, where Clarice says, "Take me with you. I'll learn how to be a thief." This film depicts what would have happened if Lupin had taken her with him. At the same time, it's also like Puella Magi Madoka Magica, if you watch the last scene of the TV version. From a different perspective, it's almost like Howl's Moving Castle. I want you to know that Miyazaki actually did something quite amazing. Well, it's already 20 minutes, but I want to explain this as much as I can during the free part. If I go in story order, I end up revealing the secret in the second half. So I'll show you the whole plan of this lecture right after this during the first half. So you can take a screenshot of today's plan for you to look at later. You'll see the flow of the second half by simply looking at it. Of course, for those of you who subscribe, I'll dig deeper in the second half, a lot deeper than you could possibly imagine. But I'll show you the whole plan during the first half. I'll show you the list of all the witches and wizards of Howl's Moving Castle and the plot. I'll speed up, so try to keep up with me. This is the list of all the witches and wizards that appear in Howl's Moving Castle in order of appearance. So Howl himself is a bird. He's basically a bird. Sophie was able to go inside his castle because of the scarecrow stick. The handle of the stick is bird-shaped, and that is like a permit. Don't you think it's weird to show that stick up close? Calcifer was tricked, and that's how she gets in. So Howl is basically a bird. The second witch is the Witch of the Waste. She's vulnerable to light. Witch of the Waste first appears in these two cuts. She's on a palanquin. Some people think that's because she's too fat to walk, but she just hates the light. That's why she has black curtains. She looks fat and ugly, but when she enters Sophie's shop in the dark, she's absolutely stunning. She's beautiful. Well, she's huge, but she's beautiful. But she gradually turns ugly as she goes up the stairs. You might think that's because she's tired of climbing and she's sweating, but no. There's a fixed law. This witch is vulnerable to light. She gets off the palanquin, and as she is forced to walk in the light and goes up the slope, she gradually loses her power. She ages, and at last, Suleiman tricks her to go inside the room with light bulbs. She's suddenly exposed to the light and loses her shade instantly. So, the Witch of the Waste loses her power. Every witch has their own weakness, and the second witch, Witch of the Waste, is vulnerable to light.